Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Monday, March 24th, and the Golden Grapefruit has been conquered. The Toronto Blue Jays are your Florida spring training champions. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, man, it's finally over. The spring has come to an end for the Blue Jays, and we are ready to talk about some regular season baseball.
It's regular season baseball. It's gone the way. It's here we go. It's March 24th and opening day on just Thursday, just a few days away. And meanwhile, you got We Are the Champions playing in the background because of the golden grapefruit as they've I guess ironically named it because it sure as heck isn't isn't
Shout
necessarily
out to Keegan
Keegan
Matheson
Madison. I don't know if
for
that one's going
leading the
right on.
bus on the Golden Grapefruit there.
Exactly. I don't know if that one's going on the mantle per se, but needless to say, it's nice for them to be going in with a strong spring training as opposed to a poor spring training.
Always better to win than lose. I can't. It's always better to play better than to not. So, I get that spring training is kind of fake sometimes, but man, you know what? It's better that we're here talking about some wins and some good performance than underperformance and some losses.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right.
All right, so what we're going to do today is this is going to be our season preview episode. We're going to kind of touch on all bases Blue Jays, drop some bold predictions, our takes for the year, and kind of tee up what should be an exciting or at least at very least an interesting 2025. But of course, first, some news from Blue Jays camp the last couple of days. Alejandro Kirk, the third extension given out from this front office, 5 years, 58 million. Alejandro Kirk is here until the 2030s. How are you feeling about your large adult son?
Yes, nice to get him extended. I think that much goes without saying. I've kind of had a bit of a turn of thought with this one, and I'll see what you kind of say about it. But I mean, initially you sent the message and I was out, so I actually didn't catch it as it broke. But my thought initially was I didn't really understand the rush. You know, you had this year and next year to get the deal done in theory. And obviously Kirk is coming in at a down point in his value just based on the fact that he hasn't been 2022 Alejandro Kirk. And so, are you paying for a guy with backup catcher qualities at a starting catcher price? Are you acquiring a guy, or rather, extending a guy that's going to be capable of going extended, 120, 130, maybe not 140, but, you know, deep into the season to September and continuing to produce? So my initial kind of thoughts on it were a little on a skeptical side just because I didn't really understand the rush. But, you look at some of the comparable AAVs in Major League Baseball, and you consider that Alejandro Kirk still 25, if I recall correctly, and you consider the fact that, you know, even still, I think he's comes in at about an 11 and change AAV, which puts him behind like James McCann. So, all things considered, this is a guy that you wanted on your team long term, outlasts Jansen, outlasts Moreno, and is a capable offensive guy and is an elite defensive guy. And those guys just don't go cheap. If he hits free agency, he's getting 80, 90 million potentially if he continues on this trajectory and even gets some help, so to speak, from the aging curve because he is so young. So there was some skepticism maybe at first, but I think as things stand today, it's a tidy bit of business. It's the right move. I think it's always kind of been a tidy bit of business, but it definitely to me makes more sense after thinking about it a little more than it did maybe before everything had been considered.
Yeah, I think it's a nice deal. I think you lock this guy up who is a very good defensive catcher and has the ceiling to be more offensively. So, I think the 5 years is really nice for the Blue Jays as far as, him being a body type that you maybe don't expect to age all that well, right? So I think 5 years is a really sweet spot for them to get him and lock him up. And, there really aren't like catchers on the horizon in this organization. So getting, if they entered next year with him on the verge of free agency, like you're panicking about who's catching in 2027, right? So I think you look at this deal, it kind of gives you some certainty long term, which this organization doesn't have all that much of beyond this year and next year. So getting him back there, I think it's a really nice deal. I think, the AAV is obviously nice. It puts him into the top five of catchers by total value and by AAV in baseball, and I think it's a pretty nice deal. If you're drafting catchers today, I think Alejandro Kirk is kind of checking in that top five range. So I think nice deal for him to kind of get the value of what he has become, and um, yeah, I think just overall like a pretty big win for both sides to kind of get this done. I know obviously the extension talks around the Blue Jays so far this year have been Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette focused, but I think getting this one done is nice, and I think we'll look at probably having a similar conversation in sometime in the near future about Dalton Varsho, kind of in the same vein, right, where these guys are elite defensively, and you can kind of lock them up in the medium term and feel pretty good about what you've done without having to totally break the bank.
And the Jays also would discuss that this was a possibility, not necessarily singling out Kirk,
Yeah.
but we'd heard that there were extension talks going on with Dalton Varsho, and we'd heard that they'd been aggressive on those fronts. Listen, like at the end of the day, for catchers, there's just not a lot of talent to be found there. And you found a guy in Alejandro Kirk that you're comfortable with. So at the end of the day, why not try to extend them?
Yeah.
It's just a tiny bit of business, like I said. It just seems like it makes sense. And also, you consider how much a catcher is going to go for, or how much Kirk is going for. It's just not that much at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
you're probably pretty happy with that as well.
Yeah, I think too, like if he has a really good offensive year, right? Like if he's, maybe not back to the 2022 like 129 WRC plus level, but if he's like a 110 WRC bat this year, I think you're looking at that deal and you're laughing, right? Because the value would skyrocket if he was an above average hitter back there. And I think if you're kind of looking at his profile, and it's kind of been one of the guys that I think, you've specifically pointed to as like a pretty good candidate to bounce back this year. Yeah, I think the value for him probably only goes up with a good year. And, if he plays 130 games this year and catches 110 of those, then the value is also going to go up, right? Because I think for him proving that he handles the workload as the number one guy, the definitive number one guy, that the value is only going to keep going up.
And it's also not necessarily an immovable deal if things go sideways
Yeah,
too.
yeah, true.
Again, it's only 10 to 15 million dollars. That doesn't buy all that much on the free agent market, right? That
Yeah.
maybe buys you like a four starter.
And
So
you buy out like his age 26 to age 31 seasons, I think is what it is. Like it's not a huge, deal if it goes poorly, I don't think.
yeah, the commitment there on the Jays end is almost minimal because of how young he realistically is, right? That just makes it so much more valuable just in every aspect.
Yeah, I am interested to kind of see what obviously, what he's owned ABS this spring. But if they do institute ABS in Major League Baseball, obviously, it would be great if he's really good at it. But if they do end up going, kind of full robots back there, then the framing value kind of goes away. So we'll kind of see how that part ages. But I don't think that you can really take that into account with the
Yeah,
contract right
you,
now.
you, you think that was a factor in him wanting to get the deal done, where he's kind of like
I
part of my value is in framing, and I maybe should get the deal done before that's no longer a attribute I can be good at.
Yeah, if I was him, I would I would be concerned about that, right? Like, I mean, if you're kind of one of these catchers who's really great at framing, I think you're probably looking to get paid while you can. And for him, like $60 million, hell yeah, sign me up for that, right?
It's not a nothing payday.
Exactly. All right. Well, not the only news in recent days, as the Blue Jays have also essentially finalized their opening day roster. I know obviously things don't become official because, injuries can happen, whatever, lots of things can happen, but the 26 players have been identified. Alan Roden is officially a major leaguer, which is really cool. Miles Straw cracks the major league team, which is also a news story. And Will Wagner makes it, and then in the bullpen, Richard Lovelady and Jacob Barnes crack those final two spots. Let's start with Roden. I mean, a great story. I think I've been pretty critical of them for being like overly patient with some of these guys, and we've seen that in the past with like Spencer Horwitz, Aurelvis Martinez, and others. And I don't think you can criticize them for that with this one. Like they went out and challenged him on day one of spring training, and he delivered. And they were like, "Good enough for us. You're going to be in our lineup." And I think John Schneider early on said that if he cracks a team, he's going to be playing. So I think what you're going to expect him to be out there. 5 days a week essentially in the outfield, and really excited to see kind of what he does. I know he's probably not going to start as a leadoff hitter, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to eventually kind of make his way into that role.
You know what's kind of funny, and you just mentioned his name. Aurelvis Martinez was the guy that we all kind of had pegged as a guy that could crack the team. And the thought was maybe that just despite the defensive deficiencies, you plop him in at you maybe third base ahead of Ernie Clement, who you figure is maybe a bit more of a light hitting version because the Jays needed some sticks. Well, lo and behold, they found a guy to plop in there that's going to be a big boost on offense in theory. I mean, if he's anything like he was in spring training, he sure will be a big offensive boost. And that's Alan Roden. He had an exceptional spring training, was crushing the baseball, and looked completely in his element out there. Didn't look out of place at all. And to me, it was obvious that he was the Jays' best option. It was just a question of whether or not they were going to let him run, and they're going to do so. They're going to give him a shot, and it's very well deserved. Big for the Twitter GMs, as we were saying in the
Yeah.
group chat. But this is a guy that's genuinely earned a shot at being a big leaguer, and is it gonna go smoothly to start? Who's to really say? There's reason to believe there's a lot of talent there, but he might not acclimate, but that's just a risk you have to take. I mean, this is really, in a lot of respects, the last year of your window until further notice. So if you're gonna go for it, bring the best 26 guys, and Alan Roden is one of the best 26 guys.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at what he did last year across Double A and Triple A, right? Like 16 homers in 125 games, 14 stolen bases, a 391 OBP, like a 136 WRC plus. Like that's a hell of a hitter, man. And I think, he was the Eastern League Player of the Month in September, so he kind of finishes on a really strong note. And this is a guy who's just realistically hit at every level that he's gone to. And, he does kind of fit this profile that they enjoy of guys who have good control of the strike zone, guys who don't strike out all that much. And, I think you kind of look at what Spencer Horwitz gave the Blue Jays last year, and that's probably what you hope Alan Roden comes out and gives with maybe a little bit more pop. I think you kind of look at the ceiling for Alan Roden's power. I think there's a little bit more in there. Um, but like just a really exciting player. Like I think if you look at like top 100 lists, like Alan Roden is probably a guy that should be, kind of in the mix there a little bit more than he was, but just because he's 25, he's not going to crack a list like that. So, really excited to see what he can do. I think, you give him the opening day start in left field, you line up Miles Straw in center or Nathan Lucas, I suppose. Spring and right, Santander, that pushes him to DH. And, I think that just, it does kind of smooth out some of the lineup questions that might have been there if you hadn't brought Alan Roden to camp.
Just a funny thought I've just had. Um, we talked about how the Jays refuse to punt on defense. They finally go out and they pick up Anthony Santander, and the thought is finally they're going to sacrifice their left field defense for a big stick. And then, of course, they bring about a million outfielders and they
Yeah.
bump Santander back to the designated hitter spot. So clearly, they're still holding strong on that defensive
Yes.
proposition.
Yes. Yes. It's good. You know what? I think it fits well. I think we'll see Santander out there like enough this year when, whether it's Vladdy needs a DH day, Springer needs a DH day, Roden DHs, Will Wagner, get him in the lineup that way. David Schneider, so many different guys. But I guess, the big cut it was Addison Barger because he had an excellent spring, looked really good, was hitting the ball a 1,000 miles per hour, 1,000 feet, like all the time. What do you make of him getting sent back to AAA?
I feel like that's a bit of just George Springer has your spot kind of move. That's kind of what that feels like because he had obviously a much better spring than George Springer, who had about a 600 OPS for basically 95% of the spring training period. Yeah, I feel like he's a guy that's clearly going to get a shot at the big leagues this year, whether it's someone gets hurt, whether it's someone struggles, namely George Springer. I mean, would it be that surprising to see him get Jose Abreu by May or June if he's struggling, but the rest of the Jays are cooking? I don't know. It just feels a lot like he's a guy that's gonna be in the picture, but just doesn't fit in the picture yet. But is probably a right fielder by midsummer. I don't think that's really that outlandish to say. I mean, if Davis Schneider struggles and he's not going to get regular at bats, but if he struggles, that's an opportunity for Addison Barger to step in. If, Miles Straw struggles immensely and then Varsho comes back and the need for a center fielder becomes dramatically less because maybe Roden or maybe you're even comfortable with Springer, that's another spot where Barger maybe slots in. He's got a couple of machinations where he's able to get to the big leagues. He probably just isn't in a position to start on opening day ahead of a guy like Alan Roden, who you're maybe more comfortable with in that left field spot.
Yeah, these are all, you can kind of group, I think, a bunch of the Blue Jays that got sent down, right? Like Leo Jimenez, Joey Loperfido, um, Orelvis Martinez, right? Like these are guys who are going to go down and they're going to destroy AAA. And Barger, I think, is probably the prime example. If he's going to be hitting like 400 for the first month, then there's going to be the calls to get him up. And it's going to be tough because I think the George Springer situation is going to have a quick resolution one way or the other. Either he's going to come out and play well, or he's not going to come out and really perform all that well. And we're going to have to, somebody's going to have a tough conversation there, and whether that's Addison Barger that kind of fills that role, or somehow they kind of find a way to work around it. We'll see. But yeah, I think Barger, again, a guy you probably want playing every day, right? Like not a guy that you want coming off the bench at this point. Getting him some defensive reps, I'm sure wouldn't hurt him at AAA. And so you put him there, you let him hit, you let him play some defense, and then these things, as they always say, like they have a way of figuring themselves out. So eventually there will be a path for him, and it's just probably a little bit of based, or probably just a little bit of time for him to wait before getting back up here.
Yeah, and also there's this consideration of him being an outfielder right now, but don't forget, also a third
Yeah,
baseman, and Ernie Clement doesn't necessarily have a, stranglehold on the third base position either.
yeah,
He could come up and just not hit as well as he did last year, and obviously the defense is part of what makes him so valuable, but he might get kicked over to being kind of the backup shortstop if he's not hitting as well.
yeah. Dalton Varsho starting the year on the IL, so that opens up a spot for Nathan Lucas and Miles Straw. Do you have any thoughts on either of these guys cracking it? I think Lucas, we talked about, like seemed like he was destined to make it just because he is 30. He's at the point where it's kind of like, well, like he's played in AAA for like what feels like 5 years at this point. So like you get him, even if it's as a bench role, like I think when Varsho comes back, it's probably Lucas that stays and Straw that goes. But yeah, I think Straw probably is the opening day center fielder. I don't know. Like, what do you think kind of with what the machination will look like with those two?
I have some Miles Straw thoughts that we'll address in a little bit as we get into
Okay,
our
okay.
bold predictions. So I don't want to give away too much, but I think I like Straw maybe more than you do. I know you think that the baggage attached to him makes it a very difficult sell.
You know what? If he comes up and plays well, then what a trade.
Then what a trade. I mean, listen, if he's anything like he was a few years back when he was worth about 3 wins, that's a money in the bank trade. But how likely that is, I think, is probably a different question, maybe altogether.
Yeah, he hit 400 in spring though, so we'll see. But I was actually just looking, and Nathan Lucas has been in AAA for the last 5 years. So
Yeah, it's been a minute for
um,
him.
yeah, feels like he played pretty well when he came up last year for kind of that short stint. So we'll see again. Like these are kind of stopgap options until Varsho comes back and then somebody moves down. But what is interesting is with Roden, Straw, and I guess Jacob Barnes kind of cracking the bullpen there. So they have three 40-man spots that they're going to need to fill. And I assume that Adam Macko gets moved to the 60-day IL, which opens up one of those. So they got a DFA two guys here. Do you kind of have any opinions, strong thoughts on who that might be? I think you kind of look at their 40 man right now, and I think it's probably like Nick Robertson and Stuart Baroa that are the leading candidates to kind of get that. I guess Tommy Nance is out of options, so he could be another one of those guys that comes off there. Um, but yeah, I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on the roster crunch and them, deciding to go with three guys that need the 40 spot?
Yeah, no, given that Nance does need to pass through waivers to get down to AAA, he's obviously one guy that's going to be DFA'd. And then beyond that, they've got a glut of these kind of so-so maybe guys that you can kind of group in there as options to be DFA. There's a lot of kind of slop at the end of the 40 man. I don't know if Subaroa is a guy I'd be looking to DFA. I think they've probably got enough pitchers where they can probably afford to let another guy in addition to Nance probably go. But again, it's just kind of jump ball, I feel like, in some respects, right? Like some of these guys just are kind of guys. Nick Robinson's a name you just mentioned. Like he's not really like that enticing. So if he's got to go, I think that's just a nature of the beast sort of thing. But I can't imagine that, especially with what's sure to be a pretty, crowded waiver wire in the next couple of days,
Yeah.
you kind of figure he probably slips through.
Yeah, I think so. Same. Yeah, I don't really, have have very many Tommy Nance takes at this point, but I think that he probably does find his way to Buffalo to start the year, especially at 34. I'm not like the Mariners maybe, they seem to
Yeah.
love
Well, big
picking
big
up
stuff
DFA
plus
guys.
guy, big stuff
Yeah.
plus guy. So,
Yeah, could see it.
um,
Could see it for a team that loves kind of off-speed stuff. So, Jacob Barnes and Richard Lovelady though. Bullpen members on your opening day roster. I
yeah,
think, we put
I
it in the
think
chat that like you look at last year with Mitch White and Wes Parsons cracking the opening
I
day
I
roster.
don't really think that those two are here in about 6 weeks, but I don't know. Maybe Richard Lovelady turns into a cult hero and suddenly is, striking out 12 guys per nine, and you can't afford to move off him. But as a second lefty, I don't know. I don't think that he's a guy that you're particularly enamored with. And
I
Jacob
mean,
Barnes, a nice little welcome back old friend moment.
neither of them have been excellent this spring, I would say. So it's interesting to see that like those were the two that they kind of picked. I know when you're building it out, obviously, seeing Pop go on the IL, seeing Swanson go on the IL, kind of dampens. Ryan Burr is in that conversation as well. Kind of does limit what this bullpen could have been to start. I know you build out your ideal group at the beginning of spring training. You're feeling pretty good about it, but now you have these two cracking it. You're still kind of you're letting Yarbrough go. So Yariel, who also struggled this spring, is kind of back there. It doesn't make you feel great about the group. Like there are definitely some problems there. So Swanson can't get back soon enough, I think. Um, but overall, I mean, are you concerned about this bullpen and what it's going to look like over the first few months, weeks here?
No, and to be completely honest, just like we kind of mentioned, Robertson's a guy that might end up on kind of DFA island, so to speak. There's going to be someone that gets DFA'd that the Jays are enamored with or like, and maybe they send down or rather they send over some so-so prospect and make a trade there. Like there's still enough time until opening day that there's going to be a little bit of kind of machinations to go.
Jalen Beeks, interesting name to me, who was released by the Astros. He's a lefty, but also, picking up old Rockies relievers is never maybe the most ideal move. So, um, he probably won't be. They probably won't be making another move before opening day. But
No, but again, like at the end of the day, right? It's just
yeah,
at the end of the bullpen there, you're really kind of slotting guys in and out and in and out and seeing who works. And, maybe Lovelady's the guy. Maybe
yeah.
Barnes is the guy. Are they guys that I would necessarily be confident being the guy? That's not probably the case, but they'll have opportunities to address and adjust the bullpen, but they have to be they can't be passive with it the way they've been in years past. This is
Yeah.
clearly going to be a group that they're going to have to make some moves and shuffle around a little bit. This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
Let's move on to kind of some more previewy, like long-term looks here. I think we can run through kind of each facet of the roster real quick before getting into some over-unders and some bold predictions. But let's start with the lineup. I mean, if you're building it out as to what the lineup probably looks like on opening day, you're probably looking Bo Bichette leading off, Vlad 2, Santander 3. Um, somebody I don't really know who's hitting for at this point. Like it's
It kind of sounds
probably
like maybe Jimenez, which seems a little crazy to me.
yeah, like Springer maybe, even though he hasn't been that good. Like maybe Roden gets that call. But then beyond that, you're going Jimenez, Kirk, Springer, Roden, and then Ernie Clement and either Miles Straw or Nathan Lucas. What do you kind of make of the lineup? I mean, Will Wagner probably mixes in there eventually. Davis Schneider's another option. Obviously Heineman's your backup catcher, but like how confident are you feeling about this group, especially after they had such a good spring?
I mean, listen, the offense in the spring was was I think the best in the Grapefruit League. So if it looks like that, David Popkins comes and saves the day and everyone has a career year with the stick, then who am I to say anything except looks good to me? But as it stands right now, they still feel like they're a bat short. They don't have a cleanup hitter. And I guess we'll see exactly how things shake down. But, it's just like every other year kind of under this regime. It's the top of the lineup you're quite enamored with. And then as you kind of work your way down, you're kind of like, well, I see the role that guy plays, but I'm not sure how much he's going to be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, picking it out, like, of course, we'll go into this with some of our other, props later. But I feel like confidence in Vlad, Bo, Santander has to be really high. Bo specifically, I think his spring, is a ton of, gives you a ton of confidence, gives you a bunch of hope that he's going to be back and performing really well, like at the player that we knew him to be before 2024.
And Kirk, too. Don't forget him. He had a
Yeah.
huge spring as well.
Yeah, I think you look at like those four, and you feel pretty decent about what they're going to give. Jimenez also was great this spring. Um, I don't know what you're going to get from him. I feel a little less confident in him being like the All-Star 2022 version of himself than say Alejandro Kirk. But overall, like I mean, I think the lineup, I feel good about it. I think they have like a decent mix. The Santander thing I think is really huge. Just like I know the profile like scares some people away, but I think just getting that threat in the middle of the lineup, especially for this season, is really huge, and it really does just kind of tighten things up and give you that power that they so desperately needed.
Yeah, enormous. They needed someone like Santander. They're very fortunate. Ultimately, they were able to get him. Obviously, it would have been nice to walk away with a Teoscar or a Soto, but at the end of the day, Santander is exactly what the Blue Jays are going to need, and they're going to need him to be an effective and important part of this lineup.
Before we move on, Will Wagner. Interesting. Like, I mean, again, you know what, a guy who has kind of seemed like he can fill multiple roles. Like he looked really good at third base in spring training, and I do wonder, what, obviously Ernie Clement is very good defensively, and he is what he is offensively. But I wonder, like, what is Will Wagner's pathway to playing time on this team?
It probably is that. I mean, he's going to get a lot of chances to kind of play everywhere to start. And beyond that, it's going to just be can you contribute? And if he can contribute, they'll find ways to get his bat in the lineup. He'll play some first base, he'll play some third base, maybe even he flips in a couple days at second if Bo needs a couple days off or if Bo DHs and Jimenez shifts to shortstop, and that gives you an opportunity to get Wagner in at second. Like he's gonna play probably three out of the four infield positions and might even play a corner outfield spot in a pinch, although that's probably less likely, but he's going to be everywhere. And that's how they're going to make him most useful is that they're going to, have that versatility from him. And that's how he's going to get himself some playing time too.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to the bat, realistically. Like he's got to hit himself into the lineup, and I think that we'll see him get his fair share of DH days as well. Like kind of, whether it's Springer slides over to center or Santander in the outfield, if you're really feeling like you want to go offense heavy, I think there's definitely pathways there. I think he's an intriguing kind of in the Rodin Horowitz mold as far as like a guy that you want to get in the lineup, but defensively, there's going to be some questions for
Yeah,
sure.
not the shiny new toy of a guy like an Allen Roden,
Yeah,
but still a guy worth remembering how good he was last season for the Blue Jays.
yeah.
And, even after he went, down for the season and ultimately had a season end prematurely, the Jays were like, we've seen enough. We're happy. Go get healthy and be ready for this season.
Rotation wise, I mean, you know what? It's the five guys. It's Barrios, Gosman, Bassett, Francis, and Scherzer. Obviously, Scherzer's thumb thing does leave a little bit up in the air, but sounds like he's going to be good to go. Overall, like I mean, as a fivesome, like how are you feeling about this group heading into opening day? Like it's probably the healthiest rotation in the AL East at this point.
I was gonna say there's not a lot of rotations that have a 1 through 5 that look like this. That is the same as it was basically penciled in about 6 weeks ago,
Yeah.
which is definitely a perk. Listen, you're not rocking with anyone of the you know Max Fried level or of the Grayson Rodriguez, who mind you was hurt level, or the Garrett Crochet level. But you have five guys that you're really comfortable with, that you think are capable starters that are going to give you bulk innings for the most part, save for basically Scherzer. Even Francis, to an extent, I would feel comfortable that he's going to go and probably set a career high for his innings. And he's your five starter, right? Like this is a group that's going to chew innings, that's going to munch innings, and is going to put you in a position where you might not have to worry about Richard Lovelady and Jacob Barnes because you're not going to be going to those guys all that often, save for the occasional blow up start.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about this rotation? Like, obviously, the floor is very high for them, 1 through 5. The ceiling is where there's probably a little bit to be desired, but that I think kind of falls on Kevin Gossman, right? Like, this is the guy who was third in Cy Young in 2023 and just didn't look right for most of 2024. So I think there's like it's sneaky. Like, if you were to pick the most important Blue Jay of 2025, like I think Kevin Gossman is in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't think he is necessarily, just given Vladdy's presence.
Wow.
But if you exclude Vladdy, he's comfortable to me at number two or number three, right? Maybe you go Bo, but he's right in that same area of need a bounce back from them, need them to be contributors.
Yeah.
Uh, who you're more comfortable being that guy to contribute between, say, him and Bo is maybe up to the viewer's discretion. But I would say that definitely Gosman's a huge part of this 2025 team.
Yeah, that's a understatement of the year that their number one pitcher is going to be a important piece. But I mean, it's going to be interesting, right? Like the strikeout rate was 31% in 2023 and just 21% last year. So if he can get like into the 26-27% range, I think you'd feel pretty comfortable with that as far as, you know what he is. He is 34. And he did show, like the fastball got hammered last year, and he's kind of gotten into this point in his career where now he's toying with different things. So I think the strikeout rate is going to be important, but he might be kind of starting to go into like his old man pitcher age where he's going to start to throw a bunch of pitches and Chris Bassett teams into getting outs, but hopefully with a little bit more swing and miss mixed in there as well.
Yeah, and he's done that before, right? So here's the
Yeah.
hope that the aging curve hasn't come for him like it's come for George Springer, and that he's still a capable guy. He doesn't necessarily need to even be a number one because of how many other guys they have, you know, just sprinkled throughout not even the rotation, but even just throughout the organization that are capable starters, right? You just need him to be good enough. And good enough is maybe like a two or even a three.
If you had to rank your confidence level with these five guys, like rank them 1 through 5 as who you're most confident in or who you're most confident in to who you're least confident in, what would that look like?
It probably goes Brios once because every year it's the same with him, pretty much, save for the aberration that was 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, Behind him, I think Gosman's number two. I think that just the track record is so strong with him, since basically he became a splitter ball guy that you feel comfortable. I mean, even last year he came into the year injured and so forth, but still was effective when healthy. And then behind him, probably Scherzer, just based on the upside. And then, you know, take your pick in terms of Bassett and
Bowden.
Adam Francis, right? Because to me, it's really just a matter of if you like the upside or if you like the floor.
Yeah. Let's move on to the bullpen. We can do this one quick. The circle of trust. If we were to, on opening day, the circle of trust, I'm going to give you mine and you're going to tell me who fits in yours and if you have somebody who doesn't. My circle of trust on opening day is Jeff Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, Brendan Little.
Is that it?
I'm debating on Chad Green. I can't decide on Green. I think the contenders like Green is
Uh,
probably like right on the edge. He was pretty good this spring, so we'll toss him in there to start. We'll put Green in there. So I think you're Hoffman, Green, Garcia, Little, and Sandlin. I just need a little bit of proof from him at the beginning of the year that there is a chance that he can kind of be there.
Yeah, my circle of trust, I think, actually is probably a lot more like your first version. Right now, it's Hoffman and Jimmy. No one is in the circle of distrust. I don't know if that's what we're going to call it, but nobody is in a position right now. Hope springs eternal, but definitely would consider our two addition guys to maybe be slop throwers. But beyond that, it's kind of jump ball for who wants to be added to that circle of trust. But, you know, innocent until proven guilty, I think, for the rest of that bullpen.
Yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be it's gonna be quite the start to the year with this bullpen until Swanson gets back, and we kind of touched on that already. But I mean, I think preview wise, like Hoffman, Garcia, the closer conversation. Obviously, Hoffman's gonna be the closer. He's probably gonna get his light show or whatever. But how confident are you in kind of Hoffman and Garcia being like this elite back end shutdown duo? And do you think that there's any chance that that closer role does kind of fall elsewhere if even if Hoffman is healthy all year?
No, I don't see it going anywhere else. There's no reason to believe that would be the case. It would take a monumental collapse from Hoffman, and it would take Jimmy basically also turning into a pumpkin. Because if it's not Hoffman, it's Jimmy. If it's not Jimmy, it's Hoffman, right? That's kind of how it seems like it's going to be. And maybe someone comes into the deadline and becomes an addition if they're having a good season. They've expressed a willingness to do so. You look at the Jordan Hicks deal a couple of years back to make the bullpen better. They've done moves rather they made moves that have improved the bullpen, so they're willing to do so. It's just a question of who your guy is. But I think that definitely that Hoffman and Garcia have the potential to be an elite bullpen. And, Hoffman already, I think, assuming his shoulder is a-okay, is already in that discussion basically no matter what. And to a certain extent, if Jimmy's elbow is fine, then him too.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's gonna be refreshing to watch those two pitch this year. Let's move on. Let's get on to the fun stuff. Let's get on to some of these over-unders, these bold predictions. One thing that I did kind of have written down, it's not like necessarily a bold prediction, but I wonder if you have any like locks for what is going to happen this year for this Blue Jays team. I have a couple, and I can throw them out there while you kind of ponder what you think here. But for me, locks for this Blue Jays team: Dalton Varsho, Gold Glove. Dalton Varsho Platinum Glove because it seems like he's going to be back a little bit earlier than we originally expected. So I think the DRS accumulating is going to be disgusting this year. Like what he's going to do as far as defensive metrics, I think it's pretty crazy. So I think that's fair to have him locked in as a Gold Glove, potentially a Platinum Glove winner. After that, Team Gold Glove, I don't see it going anywhere. I think it's staying home. You bring in Andres Jimenez, Dalton Varsho, pretty easy there. And then one thing that I'm putting in as a lock, but is like a Bo good season. I think, where he's looked so good in spring, obviously motivated into contract year. I think that there are a lot of factors that will contribute into him being like a four-win shortstop, like basically having a career year.
Yeah, you've kind of touched on a lot of the ones that make a lot of sense. The Gold Glove stuff in particular seems like a pretty comfortable decision. But uh, here's what I'll say then for my for all the Simpsons viewers, my smooth Jimmy lock of the week. I'll say Alejandro Kirk All-Star. And
Nice.
that's dipping into the bold predictions a little bit, although I've got a couple other ones. But I think Alejandro Kirk should be a lot better this year. You look at the exit velo numbers from spring training, and it seems like he's in a position to be the guy for the Blue Jays. And also, you look at the competition around the AL, it's basically Adley Rutschman, and not really sure who else, unless I'm
You gonna
forgetting
leave out my
someone.
boy?
Your boy.
Well, maybe not my boy, but Cal Raleigh.
You know, I'm not as big of a fan of Big Dumper's game. I think the strikeouts are a little on the high side for my taste, but I think it's like kind of those three, right?
Yeah.
Like it's Alejandro Kirk season. It's large adult son season.
All right, let's get into the over-unders. We've each prepared two, and then I guess we can hit the wins over under just to start here. I was looking last night and it's set at 79 and a half entering the season. I feel pretty confident about them hitting the over on that. I think, obviously 74 wins last year. You have to improve by 6 wins to hit the over. I think, at Santander, Hoffman, Scherzer, Bo being back, Kirk being better. Alan Roden, I think that they did enough to get 6 games better.
For sure. I think that, you can't predict baseball, but it sure feels like this is a team that at worst is probably about a 500 team. And again, hope springs eternal. And who knows if this is a team that's improved enough? The pitching could completely go into the toilet, and all of this hitting improvement could be for naught. But it feels like this is a team that should sniff 82, 83 wins, probably in a worst case scenario. Although last year was also a worst case scenario, and they were a lot worse than that.
Yes. Yeah, I think pretty easy. Obviously, we're a Blue Jays podcast. I don't think we're going to come out like flaming that they're going to be, god awful this year, especially when they've made so many moves to the roster and have such a veteran team kind of in the middle of their window. So pretty easy to hit the over on that one. I'll hit you with my first one. I think pretty easy one. I struggled with this line a little bit because he hit 44 home runs last year, but Anthony Santander, I put him at 34 and a half as the over-under on his home runs for 2025.
It's a good line. That's a good line. I will take the over on that. And I know it's easy to take the over on these ones as we are a Blue Jays podcast, but I like Santander. It's not like he's going to a pitcher's park, he's staying in a hitter's park. And there's reason to believe that, even with some regression, losing more than 10 to 15 home runs would be pretty surprising. He should pop 30 easily. He's got to pop about five more than that to hit the line. I think that that's definitely in the conversation as doable for him.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to hit 40. I think, just based on he'd only hit 40 once, right? Like his last 3 years are 33, 28, 44, and the 44 comes in a contract year. Um, so I'll agree with you. I'll go over, but I think it's like a very, very tight. Like I think 35, 36 probably.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It is going to be probably tight, but at the end of the day, I do think that it's something that I think he should be able to do it.
All
All
right,
right,
hit me
I'll
with your
I'll
first
I'll
one.
come with my first one. Obviously, Vladdy is the center of the conversation with the Blue Jays these days, so had to go with him. I'll set the line at 4.75 B-WAR for his 2025 season. For reference, last year worth 6.2 B-WAR. The year before that, in his catastrophic season, he was worth 1.8. The year before that, in his catastrophic season, before his catastrophic season, was worth 4 WAR flat.
So you set it at 4.75.
7.5.
I'll go over. I think again, same thing as Bo, like a lot of motivating factors here as he enters his contract year. I think, 5 WAR is probably pretty realistic for him. I don't know. Yeah, like is he gonna have like the 6 win season again? It's tough to say. But you know what, I think 5 WAR is pretty easily achievable, and there's obviously the ceiling for so much more.
Yeah, like you said, that's the ceiling is I think what's kind of draws to the over. I'll set the under just to be contrarian because we've got a
We
lot of
can't agree
agreement
on
early
everything.
here.
Yeah.
But he'll be right in that range of about 4.5 to 5 WAR.
All right. All right. Big year for Vlad. I think that is also maybe something that we could lock in. All right, my next one is Bowden Francis, and it is an F war based goal for him, and it is over under 2.5 1.0 F WAR. He had one last year in 103 innings. Obviously, second half was really great. Most of that value came from his second half. I think two is maybe a little high. But, I think what he showed in the second half, if he's kind of able to pitch to not that level, but like a couple levels below, I think there's a world where he's kind of pushing that two wins. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm hitting the under on that, and there's a reason I'm hitting the under that we'll get into in a little bit,
Okay.
but I think he's got some people nipping at his heels, and I'm not sure
Oh.
he's the number five starter come September.
I'll go with the under as well. I think what we're gonna get from him is like 150 innings with like a four ERA, which probably puts him around like 1.5 wins, especially for a guy who isn't gonna strike out a ton. F WAR obviously does love its strikeouts, so I think that he'll be limited. I think if it was B WAR, I would maybe be a little bit more convicted in hitting the over, but I think since I picked Fangraphs, I'm gonna stick with the under as well.
Alrighty, here's my last one. So last year, if you'll recall, not really an over-under, but last year I said what will be higher,
Yeah.
Kevin Kiermaier's games played, or I believe it was Blue Jays wins. I
I
don't
think it was
recall if it was
Varshow's
wins or Varsho's.
WRC plus.
That's what it was. Thank you. So this year I've done something in a similar vein. What will be higher, Miles Straw hits for the season or Jeff Hoffman strikeouts for the season?
Whoa, that's nice. I like that one. Straw hits or Hoffman saves. So I'm thinking
No, not saves, not saves,
Sorry, strikeouts,
strikeouts.
strikeouts. So I'm thinking Hoffman. He probably pitches around 60 innings, right? Somewhere around there, I think is
Mhm.
probably fair. Last year he had 89 in 66 innings. So as the closer, I think you can maybe lop off a couple innings, so probably around 60. Probably the strikeout rate is going to be in the 30s. So I think you're still looking at like 85 strikeouts. I'm going to go I'm going to go Hoffman strikeouts. I think by the time Varsho comes back, we're not going to see a whole lot of Miles Straw. So I'll take Hoffman strikeouts um, by a fair margin.
Okay, all right. So not a Miles Straw believer. I'm actually gonna genuinely say Miles Straw hits. I think he hangs around a lot longer than you think he does. And I could see him being a guy that's just a super utility bench bat a la Bradley Zimmer a few years ago, where he just kicks around and he doesn't need to really be that great a hitter. But if he gets to you know, say 300 ABs on the year, filling in once a week in center field or something to give Varsho a little bit of time to heal until maybe like July, because by July rolls around, maybe Varsho's back to maybe full health. It feels like he could maybe hit that 70, 80 hits, which really isn't that many.
I think it's a lot for him.
Okay, that'll be a fun
Okay.
one to keep track
Okay.
of.
Yeah, that will be. That's a good one. I like that one. Do you have any others or you want to move on to bold
Let's go to
predictions?
bold. Let's go predictions.
All right. I'll start us off here. I have an Ernie Clement based prediction, and it is that he wins the American League third base Gold Glove and finishes top three in F WAR among American League third basemen.
Wow, that's a fun one. Listen, the Gold Glove one, you've been on that for a while, but the top three F4 one. So the path to that, you think, is that the stick continues to improve and he's just that valuable defensively?
So I think the value defensively is gonna increase because he's gonna have a little bit more of a consistent role on the team. I'm not sure. Like he had a 94 WRC plus last year, and I think that's probably pretty accurate for what he's going to be again. I think he's been really good this spring as well. And the pathway to playing time is obviously there for him. And I think if he just plays good defense and kind of continues to be the same player, I think the ability for him to kind of creep up these war leaderboards is really good. I think I of course was looking at third base war leaders last year. And I think the locks to be ahead of him are Jose Ramirez and Alex Bregman. Obviously, Rafael Devers moving to designated hitter opens up a spot for Clement to kind of creep into that top three, and Paredes um, being he's going to be interesting, I guess, in Houston. I think there's probably a chance that he's kind of in that mix. But you know what? I think even I originally had it as top five, but then I was like, you know what? Let's get really bold. Let's say top three. So I think the defense is going to take a step forward. I think you're looking at maybe a little bit more running from him, a couple more stolen bases. I think that there's just a world where he kind of creeps up into like that three F war type season based
Yeah,
on
I see.
the
I see
entire
it.
package.
I see it. I see it. I definitely see it. Okay, here's mine. Ready? Alek Manoah starts a playoff game for the Toronto Blue
Whoa,
Jays.
very nice.
So
So
I mentioned earlier, alluded to it, that I'm not sure how much I want to believe in Bowden Francis. I think
yeah.
he's got some guys nipping at his heels. Once Alek Manoah gets back, you got to figure he probably slots into the rotation, right? And maybe they start with a six-man rotation for maybe a week or two or three. But if Alek Manoah can be just fine, then all he's got to do is basically beat Bowden Francis and Yariel Rodriguez for the fifth rotation spot. Then beyond that, you factor in maybe an injury or two, and all of a sudden maybe he's your four. It just feels like there's an opportunity for him to start a playoff game if A, the Blue Jays are a playoff team, and B, if a couple things break right, which I don't necessarily think are that outlandish.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm glad you brought up Manoa because we haven't discussed him at all yet. So, I like that pick, and we obviously saw him start a playoff game for them before. So, hopefully, yeah, it'd be a really awesome story if he does that. All right, my next one. This is kind of just in line with Bo having a good season, but I'm gonna say Bo Bichette has a 3 home run game this season.
That's a fun one. I like that. I like that. Very, very, very specific.
Very specific. I threw on my list against the Angels just to mix it up as well.
Yeah, I see. All right. Well, I don't know if you have your calendar in front of you for the J schedule, but anyone that's got tickets to the Angel series in Toronto,
Yeah.
just make sure you've got tickets to all of those for when Bo goes Yahtzee three times.
Off Yusei Kikuchi, of course.
Of course, of course. Well, lefty righty, right? It makes
Yeah.
the most sense.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go with my last one. Last year, the Jays had one 20 home run hitter in Vladdy Guerrero Jr. This year, I will say five dudes. I'll say
5.
Vladdy,
Wow. Yep.
I'll say Santander, then I'll
Yep.
say Bo, then I'll say Kirk, then I'll say Dalton Varsho.
Wow. That is bold. I like that one. You're all in on the Kirk bounce back. I think that's a
I am
Kirk bold
all
prediction
in on the Kirk bounce
because
back,
even in 2022, Kirk only hit 14 homers.
and I still believe there's still some power to be tapped
All
into.
right.
Again, only 25.
All right, all right. I like it. I respect it. I am very intrigued by watching more power this year. I think that would be great. I wrote down a couple more here so we can kind of rip through these quick. Wouldn't be a bird's eye view podcast if I did not mention Mason Fluharty.
I was waiting on this one.
I'm gonna say Mason Fluharty is the go-to lefty. You can judge that however you want to by August. I think you know what, like obviously we talked about Richard Lovelady. Um, I honestly think like Mason Fluharty might just be a better pitcher than him right now. So again, you know what, I've said this in the past, but like you condense his role, you give him a little bit more of a specific role in the big leagues. I think he's capable of getting big league hitters out, and I think that there's going to be a reliable reliever in there, and by hopefully according to your prediction, by playoff time, he'll
Yeah.
be kind of one of these. He'll be in the circle of trust
All
come
right, all right,
come
all
come
right. I see it.
October.
All right. Should I toss the last prediction I have? Because I kind of used the Alejandro All-Star starter prediction already. So I'll give you my last one
All
because I
right,
had the
all right.
four. Jake Bloss rotation piece.
Okay.
I don't know
So
exactly when. I don't know
your
exactly
rotation
how.
is huge. You have the biggest rotation in baseball. Your bold prediction is that the Blue Jays are running out a 7-man rotation.
I'm not sure when. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is. But at some point, Jake Bloss forces his way into the Blue Jays rotation.
Nice. I like it. I like it. I respect it. Who does that mean something? Because the Manoa thing, I think kind of attaches itself to Francis. But in this world, is that bad news for Gosman? Is that bad news for Max Scherzer? Who does that kind of
I
align
think
with?
I think it's just the nature of the beast is that there's so many injuries with pitchers these days, and obviously the Jays have one of the healthiest rotations in all of baseball. But it just feels like an inevitability that you're gonna have to dip into the rotation guys at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who it attaches itself to necessarily. Maybe it attaches itself to Bowden Francis as well, you know? It's hard to say with any kind of definitive certainty, but I think the one thing that is certain is that there's gonna be injuries, and Bloss feels like a guy that's gonna maybe be in that picture at some point when the summer rolls around.
All right, I've got one more for you that will hit because I wanted to include some sort of Max Scherzer bold prediction. But I wasn't totally sure, I'm not 100% sure like what the season's going to look like with the thumb, but I'm going to give you this bold prediction and it's kind of in line with the Bo Bichette one. Max Scherzer has a 15 strikeout game.
That's a sick one. That's a fun one. Could you imagine at the Dome if he did that?
Yeah, it would be crazy. Like middle of summer, it would be, people would be going crazy, I
That would
think.
be a fun one.
I just, we haven't really talked much about him, but I mean, you know what? I obviously that is kind of a specific game thing. My expectation for him is that he's going to be really dominant in a limited amount of innings.
Yeah, I think we both have kind of pointed to maybe the 120, 130, 140 if things go right kind of threshold for him. Doesn't seem like he's going to be a guy that they're going to trot out there and really kind of ask to burden a huge load. But in that maybe smaller sample, you're hoping that you just get a really effective version of Max Scherzer.
Yeah, yeah, I think like a 15 strikeout game. All right. You got any other bold predictions you want to slip in? Any other kind of prospecty things you want to mix in a Trey Savage take?
I thought about a Trey Savage one. I just don't think that he's probably going to be a big leaguer by the end of the year. But here's hoping he has a productive season.
I'll fire off one more for you. Arjun Namala, one game at AAA.
Okay, okay, I like that one. That's a fun one. I thought you were going to drop a top five prospect or something like that.
No, 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 no. I think he's, you know what? I don't know where he'll start. I think Vancouver, good starting spot. He has a good year there. Goes to New Hampshire, kind of rises up quick and then does like the Adam Macko where he gets, one game at AAA to end the year.
I see it. I see it.
All right, let's move on to our league-wide predictions here. It's I had a tough time with this. I don't know if you did. We can kind of start in the American League and we can go through the awards first. But I'll let you go with your American League MVP.
Yeah, this was my guy last year. I'll go right back to him. Obviously, it was almost pre-breakout, but I'm going Bobby Witt Jr. I just don't see a
Yeah.
universe that he isn't the guy. He's so good. He's so electric. He's so talented. And it seems like he's destined to be the next face of Major League Baseball. And I'm thinking that this is probably where it starts.
Yeah, I felt like doing this. I was trying not to be too chalky, right? Because like, it's like I'll tip it now, but like NL MVP Shohei, whoa. Not very fun take, but for me here, this kind of aligns with what with how I kind of have the year playing out, but I have MVP Corey Seager. Full
I see
healthy
it.
year. I think the Rangers are going to be really good. I think there's room there for him to be good and let's go Cy Young. AL Cy Young. Who you got?
All right, AL Cy Young. I'm going with the fun one here. I'm going Jacob DeGrom.
Oh, very
I like
nice.
him. I mean, listen, who knows if he'll be
Yeah.
healthy, right? But it wouldn't be any fun if I just picked the guy that I thought was going to win it in Tarek Skubal. And if it's not Tarek Skubal, then the most dominant pitcher in
Yeah.
baseball looks like Jacob DeGrom in theory. Again, health permitting, which is an enormous permitting,
Yeah.
but Jacob DeGrom looks electric still. And
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that he could win another Cy Young if he stays healthy.
Very nice. I like it. We are I guess we're a Rangers and Royals podcast because my Cy Young is Cole Reagans.
I had him too as a guy I was
Yeah.
thinking about really long and hard. I think I had
Yeah.
him last year.
Yeah, it's I think a big year for him. I'm not too sure what the Royals are going to look like, and again we can get into that, but yeah, it should be kind of a fun year for them with Bobby Witt and Cole Reagans for sure.
Mhm.
AL Rookie of the Year.
I'm going Jackson Jobe. I just like that he's in
Yeah,
the rotation to start the year.
yeah,
I think it just makes a lot of sense that he's going to have the runway to do something with it. And he looks pretty talented, right? Obviously debut last year, so
yeah.
he's into the show. He's going to be a factor in that Tigers rotation. We'll see if the Tigers themselves are going to be a factor in terms of postseason. I may or may not have them as a postseason team, but Job just feels like he'll have the runway to
No,
be effective.
no Alan Roden.
thought about it, but I don't think it was something I seriously considered.
Uh,
The AL Rookie of the Year race is going to be
it's
interesting.
open. It's open
Yeah,
for sure. I actually both I think are pretty wide open.
yeah.
For my AL Rookie of the Year, I'm gonna go with Cam Smith. If he
I
cracks the
thought
opening
about
day
him
roster
too.
in
I like
Houston,
that.
think he's a nice fit with Crawford boxes and odd that he's going to be an outfielder, but like I mean, hey, you know what? A dude who's was drafted last year and kind of has his his surge to the big leagues
Yeah,
completed.
he's
It seems
ascended
like it.
very
Yeah.
quickly.
Reliever of the year,
I'm gonna go Mason Miller. I just
Mason
think
Miller.
this
Yeah.
guy's so electric and feels like a guy that should be, if not the reliever of the year this year, then certainly sooner rather than later.
Yes. I had him originally, but I was kind of scared off by Sutter Health Park and what's going to happen there as far as it being a minor league park. So I went with Josh Hader. Obviously Josh Hader's a very elite reliever, and I think he was kind of getting acclimated to Houston last year, and it still posted really good numbers. So kind of on board there. Manager of the year for you.
I'm going Bruce Bochy. I think kind of
Oh
in
yeah.
line with that Jacob deGrom pick. It seems like the AL Manager of the Year, or just really the Manager of the Year, it's never a team that's really projected to do that well to start the season. It's always a team that's kind of bounced back. It's always the, oh, you weren't supposed to be good this year award. So it wasn't going to be like the Yankees. It wasn't going to be I think of like last year, the Royals are a team that did well last year. You look at the AL West, it's not going to be like the Astros. You're kind of running out of options here. John Schneider, I gave some consideration to. I think he could be in the mix just based on the
Yeah.
Jays not having a good year last year. And if they bounce back this year, he'd be a prime candidate. But Bruce Bochy to me seems like a good pick.
I have Mark Kotsay as mine. I don't think the A's are going to make the playoffs, but I think that they're going to be generally competitive, kind of pushing like the 80 win mark around there. Maybe sprinkle some Lawrence Butler MVP love in there, and I think Kotsay, you know what, obviously just it'll be like kind of the overperforming team. And like you mentioned, like I don't think that there's any AL powerhouses that are really gonna stun people, and I think the A's might kind of be like a really nice story this year that gets Kotsay some love.
That makes some sense. It's always kind of it's a very narrative driven award.
Yes.
So I think that Kotsay makes a lot of sense in that spot.
All right. Let's go. Let's do our AL standings first. Who are your three division winners?
I've got the Orioles winning the AL East. I've got the
Yeah.
Kansas City Royals winning the AL Central, and I've got the Texas Rangers winning the AL West.
All right. So we I hate when we're always like so aligned, but I've Orioles AL East, Rangers AL West, and I went with the Twins for the Central.
Yeah, I thought about the Twins. I know that they're a team that a lot of people think are going to bounce back, but I just think that the Central, sneaky good division.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. So wild cards. So last year, the White Sox being historically bad kind of contributed to, the Twins, the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Royals all being in playoff contention. And as I was going through, picking out the wild card teams here, I was kind of like, well, the White Sox are going to be really bad again. And are how is that going to impact, right? Like my original thing is like I don't love the teams in the AL Central. Like I think they all have pieces and that might just be enough for them to kind of win like 88 games and sneak into the playoffs. Like how did you kind of go about doing your wild cards and who did you pick?
Yeah, so I thought about that, but I just don't think that the White Sox are going to be like they're going to suck again. But, in terms of percentile outcome, the White Sox were so abhorrently bad. I think I wish I could remember what manager said this, but I think it was Earl Weaver that kind of said you're going to win a third of your games, you're going to lose a third of your
Yeah.
games, and then a third of your games are going to decide whether you're a playoff team or not. Somehow, the White Sox didn't even get a third of their wins.
Yeah.
So it just feels like they're probably just not that bad. Surely they're going to pick up a couple wins here and there on nothing but just dumb luck.
Yeah.
So I'm going with only one team from the AL Central as a wild card, but I'm actually going to start with my first wild card team. That's going to be the Houston Astros. Just feels like it's too early to say that they're not a team that's going to make the playoffs. I had a Alek Manoah starts a playoff game prediction, so I'll give the Jays a spot there, and then the Minnesota Twins are my third and final wild
Okay.
card team.
Okay. I like it. So I'm gonna give you a little peek behind the curtain is I don't have my third wildcard team set yet because I don't know what to do. So I have the Astros slotted in there, and I have the Guardians because AL Central wins, right? Like obviously their bullpen's great. I think that they did enough to kind of stick around offensively. I'm a little concerned about the rotation, but like I mean they'll get Bieber back, they'll get some of these other pieces. So I have them in there. So that leaves the Royals, Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, and Mariners. And I just can't figure it out. I can't decide who I want to add into that group there. Um, like the Yankees concerned about all the injury stuff. Losing Cole is big. I losing Soto obviously is also big. Mariners really like the rotation. They didn't do a ton offensively, but feel like Julio's in line for probably a better season. And then the Red Sox, obviously, they've done, so much work this offseason and Crochet and Bregman and, you take Devers out of the field defensively and they're going to be better there. And then obviously the Blue Jays, I feel like they're going to be competitive and in it till the end. Um, talk me into one of those teams.
Can I talk you into the Blue Jays? You know what?
I
It's your predictions, man. I don't want to be held responsible. I can't be held responsible for two predictions.
you know what? Yeah, I'll toss the Jays in there. Again, I think I said this last year. We're a Jays podcast. Can't not have the Jays making the playoffs. So we'll toss them in there. Jays are the rounded out in the upset of the century that the Yankees and others don't make it.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to the NL. We can do the same thing. We can go through the awards here. MVP.
Well, you already said Shohei. Do you want
I
to give
did
a
pick
little bit of
Shohei.
a Shohei soliloquy?
Don't need to. You
Don't even
go.
need to. All right. So I'm actually not going to say Shohei.
All
I'm
right.
thinking there might be some voter fatigue. And I think the only way you're going to beat him is if you're doing something like a guy like a Ronald Acuna did, where you're going 40-70. Well, it's not going to be Acuna doing 40-70 because he has said that he's not going to be stealing bases like that. But you know who is going to be stealing bases like that and might hit 40 homers? Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah.
So he's my pick to be
Very
the NL
nice.
MVP.
I like it. I like it. Very exciting, man. The Reds are interesting. I don't know how competitive they're going to be, but going to be a fun team for sure. League pass worthy for sure.
Mhm.
NL Cy Young, who you got?
Paul Skeens. It's
Paul
kind of like
Skeens.
your
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani pick.
Yeah.
Paul Skeens. Do I need to explain? It's Paul Skeens.
I did not go with Paul Skeens. I went with Blake Snell. I am severely Blake Snell pilled at this point. So he's going to be my pick. I think in LA, just going to be a very excellent pitcher.
Yeah, the Dodgers needed another guy that could win a major award, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. Glad that I'm so Dodger heavy to start. Rookie of the year,
It's really hard for pitchers to win Rookie of the Year, which is why I'm kind of low on Roki Sasaki, which is ironic because I just
especially
picked
he's
Jackson Jobe.
he's also going to throw like 100 innings maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that he is my guy. I'll go Dylan Cruz. He's like
Yeah,
the second guy kind of behind Roki in terms of the odds. And I think that the Nats just there'll be an opportunity for him to be a major contributor for them. I don't think the Nats are necessarily a playoff team, but I do think that, him and James Wood in the outfield are going to get a lot of run. Could be another team that's a fun one to watch, but probably not a team that's really a legit force.
yeah. I went with Matt Shaw. Same thing. Not super you know, don't love Sasaki as like a rookie of the year candidate just based on the innings cap that's going to be there. Cruz, yeah, I think he was a good pick. I just didn't like love any of the specific options. I think Shaw and Cruz are kind of the same boat where they're just going to get to play. I think Shaw will be on a better team, which just doesn't really matter. But I think that there's just going to be enough value there that he's going to be the guy. Reliever of the year.
I'll go Ryan Walker. Little off the
Oh, I like
board.
it. Yeah,
Um, again, don't know how good the Giants are going to be, but you think about like Ryan Helsley won NL reliever of the year last year on a non-playoff team. It
yeah.
might just come down to just saves, and it feels like Ryan Walker's a really talented guy on a team that is going to probably lean on him pretty heavily, and he'll probably just rack up the saves for them. And he's talented enough that there's reason to believe he'll rack up 35 plus saves. So
Yeah.
that's my guy.
I think the Giants are a sneaky potential playoff team.
I don't
Um,
have them, but I
I
mean,
don't have them either, but
you could convince
I
me.
think that they're going to be like in the mix, but probably won't break through there. My
Mhm.
reliever of the year, Justin Martinez with the Diamondbacks. Dude throws 102, is disgusting, and I think he'll emerge as the closer there and get a bunch of saves with them. Manager of the year.
I'm going Tito Francone. He's coming back. It's
Yeah.
going to be great for the narrative. And I also think if you've got EDLC as the potential MVP, I think there's a lot tied to that with Tito Francona potentially being manager of the year. And I'll get more into the Reds in a minute here. I mean, obviously they didn't have the most exciting of off seasons, but um, the team that I think is probably going to be in the mix for a playoff spot.
All right. This is boring, but Dave Roberts is my pick. You know what?
I don't think so, but
I
it's
went
such a
pretty chalky,
narrative
but
award.
here's the thing. Dave Roberts just won a World Series. Dave Roberts has not won the NL Manager of the Year in almost a decade. He last won it in 2016. So my thing is that he is like, like when you give some of these guys, like let's say the Dodgers win 108 games, right? Like I think that the Dodgers are just going to be so good in the regular season, and he just got his extensions just coming off a World Series. And sometimes, these awards are given out like retroactively, basically, right? Where it's like, well, Dave Roberts obviously took a step forward as a manager, kind of breaking through to win a World Series in a full season, and they won a majority of their games and were the best team in baseball. I'm just going to vote for him. Right. Like, so that's where, I went with Mark Kotze in the AL, and I'm going to go on the other side of the coin with, just the best manager or
Yeah,
best
I
manager on the
get
best
it.
team.
I
And
get it. I
like,
get it.
I just think that it's like almost one of those things where it's like he's due to win the award. And, I think Terry with Reds is a good example, but I just don't think that there's necessarily any NL teams that I think are going to come out and necessarily like shock the world.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right.
All right, who are your three division winners?
I've got the Braves for the NL East. I've got the Milwaukee Brewers for the NL Central, and I've got the guess who Los Angeles Dodgers for the NL West.
All right, once again, we are pretty similar. I went Braves, Dodgers, and I went Cubs. Hard to go against my Brewers. I do love the Brewers, but I just think the Cubs have like way too much riding on this season that it kind of has to go well for them. So kind of went there. Really debated it though, kind of down to the last minute, and going with the Cubs. Who are your wild card teams?
I've got the Padres as my wild card one. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Reds as my wild card
Okay,
two. Again,
all
I think
right,
you mentioned EDLC, or rather, I mentioned EDLC, and I mentioned Terry Francona. I just think
yeah.
that you put the puzzle pieces together and it becomes a Reds playoff team. And then finally, I can't leave out the New York Mets, so I'll put them in as my wild card three.
Wow. All right, I like it. So you went Padres, Reds, and Mets.
Yeah, the team I excluded that I think you might have, the Phillies.
Yeah.
I think that they're just maybe
Y-
approaching the end of a
Yeah.
competitive window. It's an older team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a fair take. I think, they're kind of like Blue Jays-ish in the way that they're like the top of their own lineup is really good, and then, kind of some question marks down the rest of it. So I have the Phillies in. I think the rotation, Wheeler, Nola, I liked the Luzardo ad. We'll see what happens with the bullpen. Bullpen, interesting conversation there because they're Romano instead of Hoffman now, and just a couple more things in the air. I went with the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks are going to be really good. I think that they're going to kind of push to be like one of these top teams with Corbin Burns coming in. They might take a step back offensively, losing Jock and Christian Walker, but yeah, Burns comes in. The rotation is stacked. Like you've got Jordan Montgomery getting cut. Obviously, he's had such a bad year last year, but really like the Diamondbacks. And then I also went with the Mets. I really wanted to have it be one of my bold things that they don't make it because the rotation is so questionable to me. Like obviously with Mania going on the IL to start the year, they don't really have like the high upside. I like obviously Sanga's there, but when you're looking at like Clay Holmes, McGill, Canning, and Peterson, like I mean, I just don't love that, but tough to beat a trio of Lindor, Soto, and Alonso.
Good, it's a good team. It's a good team. Just we'll see how the pitching goes.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, let's do World Series picks. Who you got as your AL and your NL champion, and who comes away with the World Series?
We're going Royals over
Whoa.
Braves,
Royals over
and we're
Braves.
running it back with 2015 all over again, with the Royals taking home
Wow.
the World Series.
Once a decade. Once a decade. Good for them. I also have the Braves winning the NL, and I have them beating the Rangers in the World Series. Kind of like what Texas has done. So
Yeah,
why not? We're both Braves pilled apparently.
apparently. I guess we'll
But they
see. I was Anthopoulos pilled.
I mean, they're, you know what, like getting Strider and Acuna back. And, baseball's like one of those things, right? Where it's like if a team has a bad year, you're almost like, well, come on, like
Yeah,
they're gonna bounce back, right? So, and they add Profar, who we both like. Um, yeah, I think the Braves are set to kind of
yeah.
be the team that was promised last year.
I think that sounds about right. And I don't see the Dodgers going back to back.
Yes, agree. I agree with that.
Too
Well,
difficult to do that.
maybe. I don't know. Tough to
Maybe.
say.
I
Tough
don't
to say. We'll see.
think.
We'll see. They're probably the greatest assembly of talent that we've seen in a really long
Probably.
time.
In our
So,
lifetime, I'd say that's probably about
yeah.
right.
All right. Well, that does it for our season preview. Do you have any other bold takes that you want to drop as we run out the door here?
I'm just about ready for baseball to start, man. Just a few days away.
Well, two bold takes from me. Blue Jays win a playoff game now that I have them locked into the playoffs, and Mike Trout gets traded.
Fun one to drop right there at the end.
All right. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Pod. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter. And the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the season.